An Apple whistleblower is going public over, quote, lack of action. So this is something that you've talked about on your show. I've talked about on my show. It's been exposed time and time again how our phones are listening to us all the time, and our TVs can listen to us, and all of this is happening. So here is a whistleblower, a former Apple contractor who helped blow the whistle on the company's program to listen to users' Siri recordings, has decided to go public and protest at the lack of action taken as a result of the disclosures. In a letter announcing his decision sent to all European data protection regulators, Thomas Le Bonnet said, "It is worrying that Apple, and undoubtedly not just Apple, keeps ignoring and violating fundamental rights and continues their massive collection of data." So here's some of the stuff that he was exposed to when he was working for them. And he's saying, basically they've not been living up to the idea. So following the revelations that this guy blew the whistle on initially, Apple promised sweeping changes to its grading program, which involved thousands of contractors listening to recordings made, both accidentally and deliberately, using Siri. The company apologized, brought the work in-house, and promised that it would only grade recordings from users who had explicitly opted into the practice. "We realize that we have not been living up to our high ideals," the company said. But he's saying that they never really faced any consequences for what they did initially, and they're still not really taking this seriously. And here's what he experienced. "I listened to hundreds of recordings every day from various Apple devices. These recordings were often taken outside of any activation of Siri," meaning they're not talking to Siri. Their phone's just there. "These processings were made without users being aware of it and were gathered into data sets to correct the transcription of the recording made by the device. The recordings were not limited to the users of Apple devices, but also involved relatives, children, friends, colleagues, and whoever could be recorded by the device. The system recorded everything: names, addresses, messages, searches, arguments, background noises, films. They know what you're watching, and conversations. I heard people talking about their cancer, referring to dead relatives, religion, sexuality, pornography, politics, school, relationships, or drugs, with no intention to activate Siri whatsoever." They can hear it all.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we have a surveillance state, and we've been all given these. They don't need to bug. The NSA doesn't need to come in and hide bugs in your lamps or whatever. They have it here in your pocket.
They got it right there.
And they can record and listen to everything. And it's like, wow, this is an amazing tool. And it's both you and I use it for our comedy, to promote stuff, to social media, to do our YouTube shows. I mean, we've both taken videos on the road, and it's cool and all that, but they can track your every movement. And now they're going to even use COVID-19 to come into your home. The tracers said you got COVID-19, so now we're going to send the COVID-19 task force to come into your house or whatever. It's like,
that's the craziest thing. I mean, we've already seen overreaches of surveillance, and you see this every time because, they weaponize it, like they weaponize any catastrophe. I mean, it's the same way that they pushed through the Patriot Act. And now they're reauthorizing parts of the Patriot Act, which, oh man, great piece of legislation. Glad we're seeing that resurgence. And yeah, there has been some incredibly dangerous policy when it comes to surveillance that has been moving forward and continues to move forward. And the sad thing is that, and Shahid Buttar can really talk about this in depthly. I've had him on the show to break it down a number of times. There are ways where we can use this technology together productively. Like, it can be done. Like, it's not like, and it's one of those things. I mean, when it comes to technology, I'm kind of like from the school of thought of Nicholas Carr, where it's like, look, the technology is not going anywhere. It's not going to go away. It doesn't work that way. It's here to stay. So we need to use it as ethically as possible and as responsibly as possible, and realize that it's a tool. So, there's all these ways that we could be using technology for the betterment of this, to the betterment of handling this pandemic or pandemic. Did I say it right? Pandemic. So we could be using this to help in the pandemic, but instead we're doing the opposite. And I mean, I'm curious to see where this goes. I mean, you look at the article that we're looking at, and this was sent to me by Brooks. Shout out to Brooks for sending this over on the Twitter. This is the Guardian covering this stuff, which, the Guardian, there's some good stuff that comes out of the Guardian, some not so good stuff that comes out of the Guardian. But still, like, there's a lot of stuff that, the reason for pointing this out, there's a lot of stuff you're not going to see this covered in the United States press. It's like you got to go across the pond to hear this kind of stuff. You're not going to see this on MSNBC. You're not going to see this on CNN. You're not going to see this on Fox News.
Well, because these unelected tech billionaires help control the media. I mean, Apple spends a lot of money on our corporate media. So there's not going to be a lot of negative stories, on MSNBC when Apple is buying all this ad time, where there's always the new Apple X53 floating in the air looking all cool or whatever, like those ads that are always playing and telling you to buy the new one, get the new one, get the new one. They're not going to turn off that gravy train, because our media is about, I mean, you and I both talk about this. It's one of the things that Apple does by buying ad time is not just to sell phones, but also to buy favorable coverage. So CNN's not going to dig deep on this and talk about the surveillance state, because they're a part of it.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. That's exactly what. So do you think we're going to see any constructive change? I mean, I know it's pretty early as far as this gentleman's concerned, but do you think that there's a chance that this will be reined in a little bit as a result of this whistleblower or potentially future whistleblowers that follow him?
Maybe, but it'll come down to the people. Like, waiting for this corrupt media to get to ring the bell is forget it. So people need to impose their own changes. You've talked about this because of Edward Snowden. The reaction to Edward Snowden was we all started putting tape over our
right.
our video cameras, and we need to do that with our phones as well, but they're recording our talking as well. It's like,
yeah. So what do you do? Do you tape over the camera? Do you tape over the microphone? Like, what do you do? Like, there's really nothing you can do.
I'm starting to do more things in my life without my phone. Like, I went surfing this morning. My phone stayed home, so nobody.
You don't keep your phone on you when you surf?
No.
You don't have one of those little, like, waterproof, like, side buddies where it's like.
But, like, I didn't even bring it with me to the beach. I just, like, I don't. And, last week I took 2 days off from doing my show. And yeah, I had my phone with me here and there, but I just, like, I'm just leaving it at home or leaving it in my car and just putting it in a bag so they can't hear what's going on. Like, I just am shutting them out more and more, because the thing that they need is data and information, and that's all done through the surveillance. I mean, that's all they need. They can't get enough of it. They want to know what all of us are thinking and doing all the time, and run their analytics and see how they can disrupt that. So but I'd be curious to hear what Shahid Buttar says and others who say, how can we take this technology and use it for our strengths as activists? I'd like to hear more what those tactics would be.
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about it on this show, it was basically just a call for more transparency between the consumers and, the companies themselves. And whenever there is, because the idea of tracing when it's requested, that's an entirely different situation. If somebody comes forward and they say, hey, I tested positive for COVID, I want to go through my records so that I can contact every single person and kind of retrace my steps to the best of my ability, and I want your assistance. Well, that's different. Now there's a partnership afoot here, trying to work on a cause of, fighting this pandemic. So, you know what I mean, though? Like it's completely different in this situation now. Sure. So it's like, but there needs to be that kind of transparency. There needs to be those types of rules where it's very much, has to be voluntary. There has to be a process of how this is used, when it is used, and where it is disseminated. That all needs to be on the surface. And without that, you don't have, constructive use of technology to help fight a pandemic. You have overreaching surveillance, which is what we have now. And it's not helping. There's no evidence that any of this will help. Like there's no evidence that this will just make things worse now and after the pandemic is over.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like the Patriot Act. They said there was a sunset clause in the Patriot Act, right? Just going to use it for a couple years after 9/11. And
right.
Of course, they keep, I mean, the democratically controlled Congress just voted last year to extend it. So when the governments and the powerful take away your freedoms, they rarely give them back.
That's the thing. Yeah, and that's the thing.
They always use fear to take them. And so they'll just keep you afraid. Oh, well, there's a new pandemic. There's a new COVID-20 or whatever. Like they'll just, the sequel, whatever. And they'll just,
That's what they're going to call it. They're going to call it the sequel. They're going to call it CatFid the sequel. Another pandemic. Stay in your homes.
CatFid the sequel, another pandemic.
That's what's coming, man.
Oh, I'm excited for that.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your news on